Hello, this is Talking Europe. I'm Catherine Nicholson, and my guest in this part of the programme is one of the people most closely involved in dishing out some huge sums of money at the moment, European Commissioner for Budget, Johannes Hahn. Now, after the pandemic took a serious chunk out of EU economies in 2020, the bloc is betting on massive public spending projects to haul them out of the crisis and into a brighter future. Well, the whole package is known as Next Generation EU. It's worth 800 billion euros in total across the 27 member states. And it's going to be handed out as a mixture of loans, but also grants. Now, as well as rebooting the EU's economies, the aim is to achieve certain green and digital objectives too, with a certain proportion of the money ring-fenced for each of those. Johannes Hahn, thank you very much for being with us. So I wanted to start with the Next Generation EU plan. In general, it's been a year since EU leaders agreed on that huge package of measures. How many of the 27 member states' plans are ready to go right now?
Well, first I have to say, indeed, it was a huge achievement to have everything finally done within 1 year. So we have already issued our first bonds in June. We will do another one now in July. And we can start having our first disbursements to member states probably still in July. In August, I expect next week the first approval of reform plans by the other member states. So I think we are on track, and yeah, we can make a strong contribution to the recovery of Europe.
I wanted to see if you could tell me and the viewers a bit about how it actually works. You mentioned there about the bonds. That's one of the ways of raising the money with a joint debt issuance. Is some of the money already being handed out to the member states? What's the time frame for this money?
No, the issue is that we have, since October last year, negotiated with all our member states so-called reform and resilience plans, which define how the money should be spent, because it's not only to transfer a certain amount to national accounts, but it is also about prioritizing our political goals, and this is, so to say, the Green Deal, but also digitalization. That's why we have said at least 37% of the available amount should be used for addressing climate change, and at least 20% should be used for digitalization. In most of the countries, this is much more. It's usually between 2/3 and 75%. And now we have concluded this preparatory phase in these days. Most of member states have submitted their plans. They are just in the process of being adopted. And in parallel, we have started to prepare everything. And that's why I'm saying we have made our first issuances in July in order to prepare the financial means serving member states in order to start implementing the plans.
Okay, well, one member state that hasn't yet had its plan fully approved is Hungary. I believe it's due to get between 7 and 8 billion euros of the Recovery Fund money. It was leaked to reporters in the last couple of days that the European Commission, your department, I'm sure, is not prepared to approve Hungary's share of the money just yet. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, there is some excitement due to the ongoing debate about the GPDI legislation in Hungary, but on substance, it's the usual exchange with the member state, and this is also the case with others, about, so to say, final elements related to the plan. At the time we are sitting here, I can't make any further comments about this process, but I'm sure...
I read that it was to do with ensuring anti-corruption measures were put in place in Hungary.
Yeah, it's for each member state, the question how, so to say, the implementation is monitored and is audited is one of the, let's say, cornerstones, because, as you said, we are talking about a huge amount of money, and therefore it's necessary that we are reassured how this money is implemented in terms of sound financial management, but also if it's about pursuing, again, our political priorities. Because we have to report, for instance, to the capital market, if it's about one important element of our issuance program, green bonds, then indeed, so to say, the money raised at the capital markets for green investments are really used for green investments.
And is there a time frame on the approval of Hungary's plan, or is it sort of just, you know, you're waiting until certain reforms are put in place regarding corruption or whatever other issues you're looking into?
No, it's about agreeing about the reform plan, and I assume that, like for other plans, we have an agreement very soon.
Just sticking with Hungary, on Wednesday, the European Commission President, your colleague Ursula von der Leyen, was at the European Parliament, and she spoke out in strong terms against a new law in Hungary that you mentioned is widely seen as an attack on the rights of LGBT plus people in Hungary. She said the law goes against fundamental values in the European treaties and that the Commission is a guardian of those values. Now, there's already conditionality on those values being respected in terms of cohesion policy funds, a different area, of course. But on that basis of what Ursula von der Leyen said about being the guardian of these values, is the Commission prepared potentially to withhold some of the recovery fund money on these same grounds of respect for values, rule of law, media freedom, rights of minorities?
You're rightly referring to something which is one of our core elements if it's about European values, and this is, of course, no discrimination of sexual orientation, religious belief, and so on. And therefore, it's something which is not negotiable, if I may say so. But in the meantime, we have a kind of toolbox how to address deficiencies in the area of rule of law, and one has to see which one is the most appropriate and efficient one, if I may say so, to address in particular this specific case.
And could it then be the case that Hungary's recovery fund money is made conditional on respecting certain rule of law engagements?
This has to be seen, because we have clearly the task to see if we are trying to apply the new, what you mean, conditionality mechanism in terms of rule of law, if this is the most appropriate measure, or if there are other, so to say, measures in our toolbox which are more and better targeting this issue. But it's absolutely clear that this is something which has to be corrected.
Now, one way that the EU is raising money to fund all of this, it's not just bonds, it's also what's known as own resources. So this is money raised by the European Union more directly. One of the mechanisms called the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM. In a nutshell, it would put a levy on imports from foreign companies that aren't subject to the EU's higher carbon reduction targets. Commissioner Hahn, how much does the Commission expect to raise from the CBAM?
Look, we will present our proposals still in July. CBAM is one of the potential new own resources which should contribute to pursue, first, this is top priority, our climate goals, but second, also partly finance the repayment of Next Generation EU. Well, it depends on the final construction of this, because it's also linked, of course, to the ETS system, meaning the emission trading system, where we have these allowances, and we have to see the link between the both. It's also about potential compatibility with the WTO regulations.
Indeed.
But it's something where we want to protect the European industry, which is, so to say, asked to be much more climate oriented. And so therefore we have higher technical standards.
Less competitive in a way.
And therefore there could be a risk to be less competitive to those who are producing outside the Union with not the same standards, and therefore producing cheaper. And in order to create an equal level playing field, this should be introduced, and it depends again on the final structure, but a couple of single-digit billions could be and should be raised over the years.
One other aspect to do with funding the recovery that was actually strongly resisted by some so-called frugal countries, including your country of origin, Austria, a joint borrowing by the EU 27 on international markets to fund grants, not just loans. Italy's Prime Minister Mario Draghi said a couple of weeks ago he's certain that this kind of joint borrowing should become permanent if the recovery fund implementation is successful. Would you agree? Well,
I think we have to see and to accept that we have activated a legal construction, which was also the result of political discussions, clarifying that what we are doing is, even if it goes over many years, in its legal construction, a one-off action.
But one-off actions can be repeated, I think is the point.
It has a clear start and a clear end, even if the end is in 2058. But this was necessary in order, for instance, to get the agreement from Germany and from other countries. But I think what Prime Minister Draghi said, okay, I think indeed now the focus should be on a successful implementation so that people can see the European added value of all this. And if this is a success story, it's probably too early to predict how things then might evolve. Now I think the focus on everybody in each member state here in France should be really to use this money, to do it, to use it in a targeted manner, and to contribute not only to the recovery, to the situation of 2019, but to make our societies and businesses more competitive, more resilient for the global competition we are facing.
Johannes Hahn, that's all we've got time for, but thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thanks to you for watching as well. Hope to see you soon here on France 24.